Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Smitha Gopal. I am the COO at EcoMap, and it is my pleasure today to welcome Raquel Valdez Sanchez to our webinar series. Raquel is the COO of BCL of Texas. She has 18 years of experience with the organization, and she's helped thousands of business owners secure $45 million in lending, creating hundreds of jobs, and she also launched the Community Loan Center. Raquel is a fifth-generation Austinite, a volunteer with several community organizations, and she serves on the board of Caritas of Austin and the Dream Come True Foundation. Also, Raquel, congratulations on your recent appointment to the City of Austin Prosperity Economic Commission. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So let's kick it off. I know that you have a presentation to share with us, and then I have a few questions for you. And at that point, we can also take any questions that we have from the audience. So let's get started.
Sounds good. So I'm excited that y'all invited me to be part of this because BCL has been going through a number of transitions and changes as we've grown and really transitioned into truly being more of a statewide community economic development organization. What I wanted to do is talk a little bit more about how, as a CDFI, we're building relationships for community and economic development throughout the state of Texas, and how other organizations can look at this as a framework of building community and economic development relationships within their communities. So just to give a little bit of background about BCL, it's where our mission is to build strong communities. And the way that we do that is we focus in on wealth building asset programs such as lending, down payment assistance, pre-development for development organizations. And what we do is we focus in on homeownership and entrepreneurship and giving them financial tools and education. And we do this specifically with an emphasis on diversity. As a Latina-led CDFI, one of less than 100 Latino-led CDFIs in the nation, it's where we really want to be able to make sure that we're focusing in on our most historically underserved communities, whether it's communities of color, women, veterans, and entrepreneurs that are in rural communities, as well as our low to moderate income businesses. We want to be able to know that they're getting access to capital, access to products, access to resources. And with that being said, what we've done is we've been certified as a number of different entities, such as with the U.S. Treasury, we're a CDFI. We're also a community development entity, a CDE, to be able to access programs like New Markets Tax Credit. We also have been, at the very beginning of our inception of our organization, certified through the U.S. Small Business Administration as a community development corporation, a micro lender, a community advantage lender, which does 7A. And then also, because we serve rural communities, and Texas does have a strong rural community framework, it's where we have our designation as an intermediary lender, community facilities lender, and then a micro lender. And because we're doing lending under a consumer loan program throughout the state of Texas, we also are regulated as a consumer lender with the OCCC. And some of the focuses that we have are strategies around supporting our communities. And with our strategies, when we look at our communities, we're looking at them as very different, diverse networks and kind of our pillars. But what we also do is we know that they overlap in terms of the work that we do. So one of our first strategies around homeownership. And what we do is we focus in on financial education through coaching, pre-purchase counseling, home buyer education to be able to meet some of the requirements around down payment assistance programs that our state and local entities offer. We also have designed loan funds related to down payment assistance, mortgage lending, specialty programs specifically around ITIN and community land trusts. And then we also work on post-purchase foreclosure prevention. When it looks at strategies, the number two strategy that we have is for entrepreneurs, being able to provide them with small business coaching and education classes. And then specifically on our lending side, which is the root of who BCL is, it's where we've developed out a number of small business loan programs, from doing new business and growth loan funds to our Texas Small Business Diversity Loan Fund, where we are able to then work with a number of businesses throughout the state, where we focus in on loan amounts anywhere from $10,000 all the way to $500,000. And what we do is we work to make sure that we provide all of our businesses with support, whether it's capacity building, where they're going through our one-on-one coaching and education, or whether it's providing them with specialty products designed with, I want to say, more flexible underwriting, more flexible criteria, more flexible guidelines, so that we can really be a companion for our banks and credit unions that are out there, as well as fit in the gaps where our other CDFIs within our market aren't necessarily serving. Under our strategy 3, what we have is our community development, and community development sometimes goes into just affordable housing, but for us, it also extends into doing more than just that. It's really building our communities up. So we do our real estate development fund where we actually manage real estate development under a subsidiary. We have a loan fund that we do and we manage for a number of local government entities around the state of Texas. We have our community impact lending, which is specifically around our community facilities funds that we provide to be able to build things like daycare centers, community centers, firehouses, and other things that are most needed in communities. And then we run the Community Loan Center of Austin, the Community Loan Center of Dallas, which is our small dollar loan program, combating predatory payday and auto title lenders within our state. And at the end, it comes down to our fourth strategy, which is asset building. And specifically what we want to do in all of our programs and all of our strategies to help create generational wealth, transfer that wealth, and be able to empower families within the state of Texas to plan for their future. What we've seen, especially in our major urban areas, is a lot of change. And that change has been related to gentrification, has been related to revitalization of neighborhoods and communities, and the transition of wealth and money. And we want to be able to help communities be able to have a right to return and have other programs and products that can be able to help retain them in the neighborhoods that they lived, worked, and played for multiple generations. And so one of the things that I want to talk about was really about the inventory of assets. Working within both small communities within the state of Texas, as well as major urban areas like Dallas and Austin, it's where we know that there are a number of organizations that work in the different pillars that BCL works in, as well as overlap within a number of other pillars. And what we wanted to talk about is really sharing just how we have to consistently do an analysis of these stakeholders to be able to figure out who is engaging and helping to build strong communities with us. Where are the gaps within these organizations? And how do we do a needs assessment to be able to create focus areas? And so what we constantly are doing is looking at the various corporations, anchor institutions, and major employers. That may include organizations like universities, government agencies, as well as our hospital systems. And then what we're looking at also is who are the individuals that are making up our small and medium business communities? What are the ones that have been stakeholders for over 20 plus years, which are our legacy businesses? And what are the needs and demands that their businesses are going through? How are the chambers supporting these businesses in our communities? What are they doing to be able to bring in medium-sized businesses that can be able to also be part of the ecosystem of our corporations and our small businesses? And where do our financial institutions lie? How many are within our community? What products are they offering? Where are they focused on in terms of a concentration or their audience? And because I work in some major areas where nonprofits are very centered, it's where we want to always look at all the nonprofit organizations that are part of our assets. And we specifically look at our social determinants of health to be able to look at how do those factor in. So healthcare, access to those organizations, education, social and community organizations that are part of our neighborhoods, the economic stability where BCL typically falls under, and then housing, which is another area that BCL is connected to. What do these all mean and how are we bringing them together? This is where really what we're looking at is when we start putting together a master list and really not just a list, but really having bigger conversations, we're able to then figure out, okay, where do we go from here? One of the things that we did really strong in Dallas is we actually had a third-party organization and a financial institution come in, and they led stakeholder meetings of more than 100 plus organizations across the city where they focus in on what are the gaps and how do I identify the organizations that are going to come and populate. And specifically, we were looking at CDFIs within our group of what are the differences in the products that we offer, what are the differences in the clients what we're serving and where they're located at, and how can we be able to come together to be able to work on something similar. And so that's where the engagement of community partners comes in. We can't do it alone is bottom line. We have to be able to work together and we have to really be able to figure out what direction are we going in and what is the impact that we collectively want to work. And so it's a lot of work to be able to cultivate all of these stakeholders and really figure out who's going to lead this. Because sometimes as a CDFI, you want to take a step back and let others lead, especially the ones who have more flexibility around leadership if it's going to be something that's driven by the city in terms of government or the state. And then there's other times that you want to step forward, especially when you're the one who's developing out a product and a solution. to be able to address some of the needs of the community. And so that's where BCL's worked on a few different ecosystems where we've put together what are the ways that we want to be able to address the issues, the solutions, the problems, and how are we building out our ecosystem platforms to be able to do that work. One of the things that we did is we built out the Dallas Build ecosystem. And with the Dallas Build ecosystem, it was specifically developed out by, again, the work that was being done by the financial institution and the third-party organization to identify the key CDFIs, key nonprofit organization, and key financial institutions that wanted to address small business needs. And what we did is we came in as just a community partner. We were not the lead in this, but we were one of the ones who helped give them the information of what does the main need of the Dallas Build ecosystem need to have focus on. And so ultimately what it was is to be able to provide resources for businesses that are in startup, our small businesses, as well as our nonprofits, to be able to give them access to organizations across the entire DFW area, give them access to lenders who are providing small business loans, CDFI specifically, and then be able to provide them with access to a number of city-related resources that were addressing small business needs. And what we did is that as we were taking a step back and working in other communities, we said, how can we be able to harness the same kind of ecosystem building? So in a small city of less than 250,000 in population, we moved and designed our own platform there called Think Big. With Think Big, it was a small business resource system. And specifically what the city was looking for a key organization, which BCL came in to do, to be able to just help small businesses find resources specifically within their city. Everything from being able to find resources such as a CPA or an attorney, being able to find networking groups to be able to connect with peers, being able to find funders, as well as finding a central place to have all of the training so that people didn't have to navigate 5 different other business support organizations. They didn't have to go to 5 different websites. They didn't have to get everything from one agency and not have trust with the others. What we're really creating with this ecosystem is a trusting space where we could be able to have everybody feed in their information, as well as our technology platform be able to pull that information from. And that's where in Austin, what we're doing is we're starting out that same concept. BCL took the lead with this one. And it's where what we did is we built out this Austin small business ecosystem and resource hub. But right now we have over 15 other organizations that are very involved in building out this ecosystem. And we're doing it a little bit backwards, where we have goals, we have a mission of the work that we want to do as organizations. But what we're doing is we're now kind of going back out and looking at what was the needs assessment that was done 2 years ago. How is this organization going to address those needs? Where are those gaps falling into? And how can we be able to make change happen? And so it's where a lot of it comes down to what we've found is our ecosystems are ever growing. They are ever changing. They are technically what we call evergreen. And we need to be able to have systems that can be able to address having evergreen. And so that's where transitioning into technologies for managing these resources has been so important. And this is something that we've been working on pre-COVID. It's been something that we've been working on for almost 5 years now. Because there's so many different organizations coming out with technology platforms, as well as our own funders being able to send us technology systems. I've been going through a number of technology systems, from lending platforms to be able to look at loan origination, loan servicing, loan management, to looking at software specifically on how to be able to provide technical assistance and education support, how to be able to engage with our clients, and how to be able to give them information at a drop of a dime. And that's where one of the things that we really have enjoyed about working with EcoMap is just the fact that that AI is able to comb through a lot of the resources and information that is getting put out so that we can be able to have it in one centralized place. From there, we're able to really look at the needs and the data for decision-making that our small businesses are going through. And what we're realizing is that while there's a needs assessment that sends out a survey, and they have choices based off of who's administering that survey, what they're really looking at sometimes is a lot different from what those survey results are telling us. In one of our communities, we found that our survey results consistently talked about access to capital and the need for lending, and how there was a big gap between our CDFIs and what we were lending out and what was available. But when we looked at what our EcoMap platform was telling us with the Dallas Build community, it's where it showed us that they were really looking for peer-to-peer network connections, being able to build up their own ecosystem in terms of their providers for their financial management, their providers for strategic partnerships with expansion to being able to distribute more product out somewhere else. They were looking for other people to be able to grow the business with versus the capital need to grow the business. And so when we put the two and two together, we said, okay, now how do we redevelop out our products? How do we look at this from a different perspective? What do we need to do to really help them accelerate that business? Access to capital is the last step in that, but we really want to be able to put together the cohort. And that data from our systems told us that story. And so that's where I'm excited too, that we're going to be launching the chatbot feature and integrating that into our websites, where we're able to then have people be able to look at information, not just for small business, but for the other ecosystem needs that we're looking at too, around home ownership, around down payment assistance, about resources for affordable mortgage lending products. We have a number of banks that are coming out with special purpose credit products, specifically geared towards our residents who are at 80% area median income or below. We want to be able to also bring in housing stock because there is a limited amount of inventory with housing stock at a good purchase price. And we want to be able to help build out that ecosystem too, so that our clients are able to go to a centralized place, have access to information, and they are able to know that they have choices in terms of the lenders that they work with, choices in terms of the counseling and education that they get, and that they know that they have access to. And so I'm excited just to be able to have conversation about how we're utilizing this, because we are one of the first CDFIs in the nation to really engage in this kind of platform where we're able to bring together all of our ecosystem partners and our players and the stakeholders involved in our clients' journeys. I'm just going to put this here too, my info, so that if anybody wanted to connect with me, they can reach out via email, or they can just learn more about BCL, hear about our clients, and just get a better idea of who we are and how we're engaging in the work throughout the state of Texas.
Raquel, thank you. That was incredible. BCL of Texas is doing really outstanding work. I feel like I need a minute to compose myself and think of where I want to take this next in terms of questions. I have a healthcare background, so I think a thing that I was really surprised and really excited to hear about is that you are looking at and considering the social determinants of health, and sort of the just that broader maximum impact of your work. Can you maybe talk to that a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things is that what we've always come from is a place of a problem, right? And I'll kind of go on our consumer lending. There's a number of payday lenders in the state of Texas. It's an unregulated industry, specifically in our state compared to others. And it's where when I go in for the root of the problem to create our solutions, it's where what we are is we're addressing that need at that moment, but we aren't really addressing the other pieces of the problem, such as access to funds, resources around healthcare and services nearby. That's where other programs have been able to pop up around our community facilities, being able to say, here in our small community or a town, what are the things that are missing? Do y'all have a health center? Do we need to be able to help provide the access to capital and the financing to be able to do that? Do y'all have local resources, a community recreation center, EMS, even infrastructure? One of the things that we do on our pre-development lending is we look at our developers and where they're developing at and ask the questions around, are y'all helping to build out things like sidewalks for mobility around the neighborhoods, making sure that there's other things related to access in terms of ADA so that people can be able to move around. And so there's just so much that goes into it. So we just stay on the conversation, we stay involved, because when it comes to community and economic development, that's a really big part of who we are as part of an ecosystem, to be engaged with a number of organizations and being able to be involved in the initiatives that they're working on.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And from my background, I think of SDOH more from the provider to the patient level. So it's so micro and it's so hard to affect change when you have a patient that doesn't have reliable access to transportation, doesn't have, good access to, to a grocery store. So that you're able to address it from a more macro level, seems like such a powerful partnership. in doing this kind of work, how often, when you are sort of engaging more broadly with all the other stakeholders, how often do you feel like you are speaking with like-minded individuals, they see the world the same way? And then how often are you raising awareness or getting people to say like, oh, wow, I hadn't thought about that, but like, thank you. Now I need to change something or I need to be more mindful of this. Like, what do you see as that balance?
I feel like it's a 50-50. I think it's bringing more awareness about CDFIs and the roles that we can play. Not everybody knows about the work that CDFIs have, and every CDFI isn't always the same. There's some CDFIs that are focused in on small business. There's others that are doing major impact funding because they're larger CDFIs that are able to do things like a charter school or things like a new grocery store in the community. And then there's other CDFIs that are working with truly small businesses that are sometimes underserved and underrepresented. And so that's where, and then affordable housing too. There's a lot of development around affordable housing for CDFI. So one, just bringing more awareness about the work that CDFIs are doing and how integral we are to being able to help fund opportunities. I'll use a couple of examples of cultural arts. Here in Austin, we have a huge cultural arts music kind of programming around economic development. We're the live capital music of the city of the world, right? And it's where one of the things that our city did is put together grant programs for cultural arts organizations, both for-profit and nonprofits. But what it had a gap. And they had a gap in timing, being able to provide access to the capital funds and deploying that money to their organizations and getting that approved by city council. And so where BCL stepped in as a CDFI is we were able to put together an interim bridge product that we were able to give them the immediate access to funds so that those organizations could be able to do what they needed to do with that grant funding. And then once they received that funding, they were able to repay back those short-term loans. It's things like that where people are always trying to figure out what's the next step, and I'm having to help them see how they could utilize us as a resource and tool as a CDFI in their process.
Okay, amazing. So as you consider, maybe any one of those ecosystems like Austin, Dallas, San Marcos, maybe Texas as a whole, it feels like there's multiple players that are potentially like working towards a common goal or working on kind of overlapping efforts. How do you think about like vision setting and maximizing impact of all of those efforts and avoiding like duplication? Like, what do you see the role as BCL of Texas in terms of like helping there?
Yeah, definitely. So I think we've learned a lot over the years about, again, taking a step forward and taking a step back. In the past, it's where we used to take a lot of steps forward. We would want to lead and kind of make sure that there was a space for us, that there was a place for us to be able to develop out solutions immediately. And as we've really taken in consideration that there's other players and other organizations and stakeholders that are part of our ecosystems that we're working to build up, we want to take a step back. One, because these organizations, either they might be new within the space or they might have gone through change and turnover. And when I say turnover, succession really, right? There's generations that are coming through and there's retirements that are happening. And we realize that as new leaders are coming into their roles, they want to be able to set their own legacies. And so as an organization that's been around for over 35 years, or 34 years, actually, we just celebrated 34, it's where we realize we need to start taking a step back. And we want to be able to then come in to be able to truly be more of an advisor, a guidance, a resource, and be able to then help make sure that we're guiding their direction as they're going through these processes. And it's where I would say maybe it's more like as a coach or, as an accountability partner, where because we've gone through these exercises in Dallas and learned a lot back in 2018 and 2019, that we're able to come into other communities and be able to give our perspective and give our guidance and be able to coach our organizations through. And one of the things one of my coworkers brings up is about ecosystem building and how there has to be somebody who has helped building that. They don't have to be the one in charge, but they have to be the one who's guiding them along. And I think that's really where BCL has been able to highlight the work and experience of our organization and our leadership is to help build the ecosystems along as we go.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I love that point about taking a step back to take a step forward, which is reminding me of the story you told where your survey results indicated that people wanted funding, but then your EcoMap data indicated like, no, we're two steps before that. Like the funding is the last and maybe like most obvious or tangible thing, but that's not the first problem to address. So maybe like tell me more about that, like kind of specifically, how do you see tech as, helping to further the mission, helping to alleviate barriers to access, barriers to like information, like, do you have another success story? Like, how do you think about all of that?
Yeah, I mean, we have a few different success stories, but I think when it comes to technology, one, we're trying to bridge those gaps, especially in our rural communities, right? Our rural communities are still going through access with broadband, and it's where we want to be able to know that the platforms we're designing are given to them in a resource that best fits them. So a lot of the time, the main thing that we want to have in compatibility is around mobile access. Being able to know that their mobile phones can be able to access our systems and our platforms so that they can be able to still get information. And so when it comes down to the data and how we use it, another example I could give is that ultimately, with the ecosystem that we're building up in Austin, we have this needs assessment, and it's where we've been working towards developing out common goals. We said we're going to go ahead and just bypass and launch it because we need some realistic data. And so we're starting to see a little bit of data coming in from clients that are utilizing it. And this one is for a bigger market too, in terms of it's not city centric like Dallas is for Dallas proper. It's not city centric like San Marcos is for the small little town of San Marcos. This is centralized. So it's covering the Austin MSA, and it's a little bit more regional in terms of the approach. And so what we're looking at is we're looking at information coming in from what we call our small cities, all the cities that surround the Austin area. We're looking at data coming in from those rural communities that are also outside of Austin. And then we're looking at the urban needs that are very more specific to where our organizations are, which are in a lot of historically underserved neighborhoods, zip codes, areas. And so we're getting excited because we know that we're going to start getting some data in as our clients are using it and to figure out the next steps. And so I think that's where, it's not necessarily a complete case study of like, or a success story of where we're at, but it's more of, it's a great place for us to know that we're going to have information that's going to be backed up by our true database. And we have a report that's already been produced that the city paid money into of what businesses need. And we're able to then marry the two together to have our organization really then focus in on what the goals are going to be as we move forward with a strategic plan.
Yeah, I love that. And then you can also have like so much confidence that whatever you do, it's maximum impact.
Definitely. And that's where we know that there's a number of stakeholders who are ready to put funding dollars towards initiatives like this. We have one of our counties who is putting money towards small business development and education. They're willing to put money towards small business grants to be able to help support just strategic, growth for some of these small businesses. We have CDFIs who are already doing accelerator programs specifically for historically underserved businesses and BIPOC communities. And so we want to be able to bring all of those together to one space so that people can utilize everything accessible to them.
And do you work directly with other CDFIs and kind of make their resources known and available?
We do. And so it's one of the things that we've been doing for a long time. Here in the state of Texas, there's quite a few different CDFIs, but there's some major ones that we've been really close to. And maybe it's because they came and were developed around the same time. Maybe it's also because in the CDFI world, we also share staff. So individuals who were at one may have gone over to another. But we have great relationships with two major CDFIs in the state, one of them being Lift Fund and the other one being People Fund. And what we do is we do a full service in terms of referral resource to them. So it's where, as we're working with our small businesses, we figure out exactly what they're looking for. We connect them directly to that organization. We work specifically with the local individuals so that we can be able to make sure that we're facilitating a warm introduction, a connection, and then also getting them back on the resource hub. That way they're able to get documented that way too. The thing that we always kind of sometimes drift apart from is the facilitation of the actual funding. So it's where we are definitely able to make the connection, but sometimes we're not able to always access the information on if they're funded or not and the dollar amount with that. We do like to be able to get that data and that information because I think it tells a really big impactful story about the facilitation of funds for CDFIs and how we triage them to others.
Right, like being able to close that loop and know about the success. Okay, we have a question from the audience that I'm going to read. It's from Tim, who is watching on LinkedIn. Is there any movement in which CDFIs provide affordable or below market interest rate loans for small businesses? So in his state, CDFIs charge rates, fees, and require collateral that hinders access to affordable financing.
So every CDFI is different and it
Yeah,
depends on the product mix. I know within the state of Texas, us and the other CDFIs I mentioned before, we have been pretty comparable, one to our local banks and the rates that they're charging, as well as, again, we have worked with each other closely, have gone through needs assessments where we have outlined what our product offerings are, and we figured out where our gaps are. And so I have one CDFI, for example, does this very specialized loan product for veterans. Back when interest rates were lower, they were able to charge a lower rate at 5%. Now I think that rate for veterans is at around 7 or 9%. For BCL, for example, our current rates are right around prime. We're at 9.25, 9.5. And it's where that's very affordable compared to what our banks are also charging and what our prime rate is right now. Every state, though, is different. Every organization is different. I think it also comes down to the cost of capital. Most CDFIs don't have free funding that they're getting from grants. And in the state of Texas, for example, we don't get state funding where they specifically fund CDFIs. And so a lot of our financial institutions are doing investments in us, whether it's debt or E2Qs, and they are charging interest rates that we then have to do an additional, margin on. So our interest rates can range anywhere from 2% to, I know some CDFIs in the state of Indiana that are getting interest at 5%. And then we have to charge on top of that. So I think every organization can be different, but what it is, it's going back to what we're providing is sometimes shorter terms. We're providing a lot more flexibility. I know when it comes to capitalization, like for my micro loans that are 50,000 and below, we don't necessarily always require them to be 100% secured or even 50% secured at that. Some of them are unsecured because we have other, out of the 5 C's, other capacity of the business, debt repayment ability, as well as the owner's character to be able to look at, to be able to support why we want to move forward the loan fund. Everybody's different.
yeah. But that makes a lot of sense. And it sounds like structurally, you and that thus your customers are still subject to kind of like the cost of capital, which as we know is super high right now. And instead you're working more on the front of accessibility and ensuring a broader range of people, of entrepreneurs are able to qualify. Okay, let's see. One more thing that I wanted to ask about, like, I feel like a kind of a recurring theme here is there is so much, there are so many things, like so many services and products that you are offering to people, and they may not know all of the things that are available to them. So like more broadly, like ecosystems, there's all this information, there's all of these resources and offerings that people just may not know about. So I'm curious, what best practices have you leveraged that other organizations might be able to adopt as well, just to kind of like close that information gap and help people like know what's available?
Definitely. So we have really strong relationships with our bank financial institutions, our chambers, and our economic development directors, where we provide them with a matrix, if you will, that outlines all of our terms in terms of our loan programs. So it outlines our interest rates, it outlines the number of years, it outlines the collateral requirements, it outlines the accessibility in terms of if there's geographic regions that they need to be able to focus in, such as our rural development areas. And it's where being able to have that access, they're able to make a direct connection. And so a lot of the time we want to be able to have that information on our ecosystem platforms, and we want to have that as a resource individually for each one of those products. But we also want to be able to have something that's accessible, a one pager that every single one of our partners can be able to access. And then the main thing is about the relationship. It's where we always want to be able to let people know that we are truly the accountability partner and the individual that our clients in our community should be connecting with. And so a lot of the time, we always joke about it, is that we're one of the only CDFIs in the state that actually answer our phones. We don't have a call system. We don't have a voicemail system. We don't have a third-party, receptionist system. We are on phone queues. Everybody, excluding our CEO, answers the phone calls all day long. And it's a way for us to be able to keep a tight pulse on our clients and understanding of what they're asking for. And then we utilize our inquiry forms online to be able to have us triage those calls to the right individuals when it's not necessarily the right person. And so being able to have some of just those tools and those mentalities is that we want to be able to have that same mentality of we're doing a handshake approach. It's where we're taking risks as a CDFI that our banks aren't. And so that means we have to be able to be accessible and say, hello, how are you? Let's go ahead and do this and give them that handshake and say, I trust in you. Trust me too.
I love this, like the blend of old-fashioned customer support that you typically don't see anymore, plus then the super modern, your AI-driven platforms to help people access resources. Like, I love how it all comes together. All right, Raquel, that concludes our questions. Thank you so much for all this information. It's incredibly helpful. And really, it was lovely to just learn more about the great work that you and BCL of Texas are doing. So thank you so much for your time today.
No problem. Thank y'all.
All right, take care.